There are certain things she'll never say out loud, thoughts that come to her in the quiet of the night, when no one else is around. You've crossed her mind far more often than she'd ever be willing to admit. You're not merely a memory, you're a trace, a quiet presence that continues to shape her days. Even when she's with someone else, there are fleeting, unexpected moments when you flicker into her mind. Why does that happen? Why do you still remain? Many men make the mistake of equating communication with emotion. They assume that if she isn't texting, calling, or openly expressing affection, then she must have moved on. But women often feel in ways that are quiet, internal. She holds on more to how you made her feel than to anything you ever said. If you ever gave her a sense of safety, made her feel seen or deeply valued, that emotion doesn't just disappear. It lingers, even when she wishes it wouldn't. Emotional investment, for her, is quiet, but it runs deep. Too often, men evaluate a woman's emotional attachment based on visible behavior. How frequently she sends messages, the compliments she offers, the physical affection she shows. And when those outward gestures stop, they assume her feelings have vanished. But real emotional depth isn't always visible, especially when it comes to women. Their expression isn't always constant communication. It's often found in the way they hold on silently. They internalize their emotional moments, carrying them long after the interaction has passed. If you ever truly saw her when no one else did, if you gave her attention that made her feel like she mattered, or if you created a space where she felt safe being herself, those experiences didn't simply fade. They rooted themselves in her. That sense of emotional safety, of being valued without needing to perform or explain, is rare. When a woman feels that, it leaves behind a lasting impression. She doesn't need loud declarations or grand gestures to remember you. It's not the dinners or flowers that stay with her. It's the emotional room you gave her. The way you looked at her without judgment, how you stayed silent and present when she needed to speak, how you picked up on the small things no one else noticed. When you did those things, you didn't just express affection. You offered understanding. And that kind of connection isn't forgotten just because the conversation stopped. Emotional investment often reveals itself through the smallest details. The way your tone changed when she was tired, the fact that you remembered something she mentioned weeks ago, the comfort you offered without needing to fix her pain. These weren't huge moments, but to her, they meant everything. They became a safe space in the middle of your connection. And even if that relationship ended, the safety you created doesn't vanish overnight. It stays, tucked in the quiet parts of her mind. Even if you're no longer in her life, even if she deleted your number or stopped following you, that emotional bond isn't measured through technology or proximity. It's measured through meaning, through who you were when she felt closest to you. And that's the part that echoes back in her heart, often when she's not expecting it. Most men think they have to do something grand to leave a deep emotional impact. They assume it's the big surprises or dramatic declarations that make her remember them. But the truth is, the moments that stay with her the longest are the subtle ones, the ordinary interactions that made her feel something extraordinary. It's not what you did, but how you made her feel when no one else noticed. She's not lying in bed, replaying your compliments word for word. She's revisiting the feeling she got the first time you looked at her with real attention, not because you wanted something, but because you were fully present. That kind of presence is rare. And when she experienced it with you even briefly, it became a permanent part of her emotional memory. You didn't just see her, you truly saw her. You made her feel like she existed in a world that often makes women feel invisible. That kind of emotional recognition leaves a deeper mark than any poem or kind message ever could. It was in the moments you chose to sit in silence instead of giving advice. When she was hurting and you didn't try to solve her, you simply stayed. You didn't rush her emotions. You didn't make her feel judged. You just let her be. That kind of quiet strength gave her a feeling of safety that's hard to put into words, but impossible to forget. It became a reference point in her emotional world. No matter who enters her life next, she'll measure them against how you made her feel in that moment of simple, unwavering presence. Emotional imprints outlast logic. She may say she's over you, She may laugh with friends, go on dates, post happy pictures. To the outside world, it seems you're no longer part of her story. Maybe she's even convinced herself that she's done, that she's no longer emotionally connected to you. But emotional imprints don't respond to logic or willpower. They sit deep within her, often hidden, and they reappear without warning. Unlike many men who compartmentalize their feelings to shield themselves, women tend to absorb emotional experiences, store them, reflect on them, and revisit them long after the moment has passed. Even if she hasn't seen you or spoken to you in months, a song, a smell, a place you once visited, or a phrase you used to say can reopen a part of her heart she thought she closed. It doesn't return as a thought, it comes back as a feeling. And feelings are powerful. They pull her back into emotional spaces she thought she'd outgrown. These imprints were formed during moments that meant something to her. Maybe it was the time you stayed on the phone while she cried herself to sleep, or the way you held her hand when she felt anxious in public, or how you listened to her dreams like they truly mattered. These weren't just events, they were experiences that shaped how she saw herself and her world. And those moments leave behind emotional fingerprints, deep, invisible, and nearly impossible to erase. She might not want to think about you anymore. She might actively try not to. She may be dating someone new, exploring new hobbies, or steering clear of anything that reminds her of you. But distractions don't erase emotional imprints. They lie in wait, resurfacing when a trigger brings them back. A familiar scent on someone else's jacket, a song on a random playlist, a man who gestures or speaks like you. Suddenly, without warning, you're back in her world. Not by choice, but through feeling. This is why women sometimes feel confused about their own emotions. She might wonder, why is he still on my mind? Or why did I feel something just by passing that place? It's not about wanting to rekindle the relationship. It's because of what you represented to her, the feeling you gave her. That emotional memory doesn't move in a straight line, it doesn't follow time. It exists in the now, triggered spontaneously with no regard for logic. And here's something most men never realize: these emotional imprints don't form from perfection. They're born from realness. You didn't have to be the most attractive or the most successful. You just had to make her feel something that mattered. If you made her feel seen in a way she wasn't expecting, if you reached her beneath the surface, you became a reference point in her life. Even if someone else comes along, she'll compare how they make her feel to how she felt with you. That's the real power of emotional imprinting. It's not about possession or manipulation. It's not even about memory. It's about the impact you had. It's about the emotional signature you left behind when you connected with her deeply. And once that impression is made, it doesn't just disappear because the relationship ended. It remains quietly alive, showing up in unexpected moments she can't control. So even if your name isn't spoken anymore, and even if you've been erased from her contacts or conversations, you still exist within her emotional world. You show up in fragments, in echoes, in silent reminders. You're not completely gone. You've simply been stored until something brings you back. One of the biggest misconceptions men have is equating a woman's silence with disinterest. If she isn't texting or reaching out, they assume she's disconnected. But silence doesn't always mean peace for her. It often stirs more chaos within. And if you were the kind of man who gave her emotional depth, who made her feel heard, safe, and valued, then your silence is not just noticed, it leaves a space. A void where once there was warmth, comfort, and connection. That absence doesn't just go unnoticed, it echoes. Those questions begin to creep in during the most unexpected moments. Late at night, while she's driving, in between tasks. She starts wondering, did you stop caring? Were you ever truly invested? Did she matter as much as she thought? Your silence becomes louder than any words she hears from others. And no, it's not because you're manipulating her or trying to get a reaction. It's because your presence once meant something. And that kind of presence leaves a mark. Your silence becomes a canvas, one she starts painting with her thoughts. She replays your last words, your tone, the little things. She reads between the lines, fills in the blanks, and questions what changed. She starts to remember the small comforts she once took for granted, the stability, the calm, the sense of security. And now that it's gone, it throws off her emotional balance. It's not just about you not being there, it's about the absence of how you made her feel. But this isn't about playing games. This isn't about withdrawing to create distance. Mature detachment is something entirely different. It's not about punishing her. It's about knowing your own value. It's about understanding that if you were once a meaningful part of her life, she will feel your absence. Not because you're trying to make her, but because emotional depth doesn't fade when the talking stops. It lingers. Men who truly understand this don't chase. They don't fill the silence with desperate words or attempts to reclaim attention. They allow stillness, because they know that silence, when it comes from emotional strength, not insecurity, has gravity. And when a woman feels that silence as presence instead of punishment, it creates space for her own reflection. In that space, she replays everything she once felt with you. That's why you don't need to declare it's over. You don't need to argue or beg to be understood. If you were real during the connection, if you offered her emotional safety through your actions and words, then your silence now still carries a voice. A voice she can hear in her mind, reminding her of what was genuine. And even if nothing is said, she's thinking, she's remembering, she's feeling. That's not something you can rush or demand. It's something only she can realize on her own. And what conclusion she comes to depends entirely on how you made her feel. If you were grounded, kind, and authentic, then your silence isn't rejection, it's reflection. That stillness becomes the space where she realizes just how deeply you mattered. Never underestimate the power of quiet strength in a world filled with noise. The man who can stay composed, who can walk away with integrity, not out of spite, but from self-respect, becomes unforgettable. Not because he tried to make a scene, but because he remained steady. Not because he forced her to miss him, but because his silence reminded her of the way she felt when he was there. And that kind of silence speaks volumes. From the outside, it might seem like she's moved on. Maybe she's dating someone new. She looks happy, posts pictures, keeps herself busy. Her life might appear full. But don't confuse activity with emotional closure. Sometimes, what looks like healing is just her managing what still hurts. Moving on isn't always clean or final, especially when she's felt something deep. When a woman has bonded emotionally, mentally, or spiritually with a man, she doesn't just delete him from her life like a contact in her phone. She might say she's over you. She might even believe it at times. But if you touched parts of her that no one else has, then moving on becomes more about survival than about truly letting go. Often she's not healing, she's coping. She's trying to protect herself from the weight of what she felt. The deeper the emotional bond, the harder it is to release, even when the relationship has ended. This is where men get confused. They see her with someone else and think she never really cared. But that's not what's happening. She's rebuilding. She's trying to take back control of her emotions, even if she's still carrying traces of you. To admit that she still thinks about you or compares others to you would make her feel exposed. So instead, she puts on confidence. She looks composed. But it's in the quiet, when she's alone, when no one's watching, that the truth emerges. The unexpected song, the memory that plays uninvited, the feeling she can't quite shake. That's when she realizes, you're still there. Even in new relationships, emotional echoes remain. She might enjoy someone's company, but inside, she's still comparing. He doesn't hold her the way you did. He doesn't speak with your calm. He doesn't see her with the same depth. She won't admit it out loud, but she feels the difference. That doesn't mean she'll come back. Sometimes timing, pride, or circumstances keep people apart, even when the connection lingers. But it does mean your emotional impact didn't vanish. You may no longer be a chapter, but you're a theme, a feeling, a lesson, a part of her story. Not because you were perfect, but because you were real. And real is rare. So no, moving on isn't always real. Often, it's messy, incomplete, layered with feelings she can't always explain. If you've ever wondered whether you've been forgotten, remind yourself. What you meant to her may not always be visible, but it's very likely unforgettable. There's a part of her that still feels what she felt with you, not constantly, not always consciously, but it resurfaces in the quiet, in the stillness between distractions. When the noise fades and the day settles, that's when her heart starts speaking again. And it doesn't speak in logic or timelines, it speaks in feelings. It brings back sensations she can't explain: warmth, ache, safety, longing. You're not an event in her past, you're a vibration in her present. You exist in the background hum of her emotional memory. She won't tell her friends. She won't post about it. But deep inside, when she's being honest with herself, she knows there's a version of her that still holds space for you. Not because she's weak, not because she hasn't grown, but because when something is real, when it touches her soul in a way that most things don't, it doesn't just disappear. It becomes a part of her emotional language, a reference point, a chapter that, even if closed, left words etched in her margins. And even though time has passed and maybe you're both on different paths now, that doesn't erase the imprint. You're the energy she still feels in the silence. You're the comfort she unconsciously searches for in others. You're the mirror she still uses to measure how deeply she's being seen or how safe she feels with someone new. You're not competing with anyone now. You've already lived in the space within her where comparisons are made. This doesn't mean she'll come back. This isn't a romantic guarantee. Life is more complicated than that. But it does mean that what you were and how you showed up mattered more than either of you may have realized at the time. It means your presence had weight. It carried meaning. And meaning doesn't fade just because a relationship ends. She may never say it. She may never reach out. She may even marry someone else. But there will be nights when she remembers a version of herself that only existed with you. And in those moments, you'll still be there, not in body, not in conversation, but in feeling, quiet, steady, unshakable. So if you're wondering whether she's forgotten you, or if what you shared was just a fleeting thing, don't measure it by texts or presence or public affection. Measure it by depth, by how deeply you made her feel, because feelings leave footprints far deeper than facts. And in her heart, if you reached her in ways no one else has, you'll always remain, not as a regret, but as a reminder of what it felt like to be fully seen, of what it meant to feel emotionally safe, of how rare it is to be truly understood. And that kind of imprint, it doesn't vanish, it stays. What are your views on this? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I will personally read all of your comments. And if you seriously want to level up in life, don't forget to show some love by hitting the like and subscribe button. Stay strong. Until next time.